Hey guys, welcome to the Gods Unchained beta with the TheProfesserf. All right, today we have a special treat. I am going to be speaking with the founder of GUDecks, David. Let's go ahead and find out what GUDecks is all about. Hey everybody, we have a special guest today that I'll be speaking with. We'll be talking to David from GUDecks. A lot of the players know about GUDecks, but do we know about the people behind it? So David from GUDecks is spending some time today, and we're going to be talking to him. As you know, he's the founder and also, I believe, a developer for GUDecks. He has had multiple top 10 ranked weekend finishes in the history of Gods Unchained, so he's definitely one of their top players. And is there anything else to add, David? And welcome.
Yeah, I guess my resume isn't too exciting after those things. Yeah, I am a founder and developer, one of the two developers. It'd be remiss if I didn't also say my brother Steven is also a developer. I know a lot of people think that we're one and the same person, and coincidentally, it's only me on the interview today. So you can take that as you wish.
Yeah, so I reached out to David because I mostly interact with him through all my GUDecks question on their Discord, which we'll add a link later on. But I mostly interact with David, and I also, some of you may know, I write articles, at least news articles for GUDecks, and sort of David, my air quotes editor. So I mostly interact with David. I do interact with Steven as well. And one thing I didn't know that you just mentioned, so I didn't know it was a family business. So it's just you and Steven running this site, right?
Yeah, it's Steven and I. We have another guy who does some every once in a while. He comes on and does a little extra work for us on the side too. So
Okay, nice. Yeah, nice to hear. It's a little family business. You had a small business going there. All
it
right,
is. It is.
great, great. So yeah, I'll start off with some questions. How long have you been playing Gods Unchained, and what brought you to it?
So I've been with Gods Unchained since the beginning. I'm sure there's some people out there who remember the original days from geez, I think it was the end of 2018 when the beta when like I don't know if you'd even call it a beta if we're still in beta now
Right.
started. And so yeah, so right from the beginning, I remember those early days where if you guys think there's some OP cards now, you should go ahead and kind of watch some of those streams or those early videos of those days and see how strong some of those cards were back then.
Right. So how did you hear about Gods Unchained? What brought you to it?
Yeah, just me and my brother, we've been in the crypto space for a while. Like most people, we started with Bitcoin a long time ago. We're both software developers, obviously, so we were pretty familiar with crypto and stuff long before NFTs came about. And then, we kind of got on the Ethereum train. CryptoKitties was exciting when that first came out, and, just kind of the possibility of gaming. And so we actually didn't, I remember reading about Etherbots when that was first coming out, wasn't super excited or into that. I thought having something fully on chain was actually not the way to go, at least at that point in time. And I mean, I guess I still believe that. And so when Gods Unchained came out, we're like, oh, here's an actual game that seems to have backing. This seems to have like an original, kind of not an original idea, but just like an idea that obviously would be successful. Trading cards are a super popular platform, not something that requires a huge, triple A team to develop. So we thought, oh, this looks like the first real game. And I stand by that. I think it's the first real game that has come out on the blockchain. And so
Interesting.
from there, we just kind of got along with it. Yeah.
That's good to hear. So you mentioned that you and your brother already had crypto experience with Bitcoin. Um, would you say that going into GU kind of broadened that, or did you already feel like you guys were pretty knowledgeable and this was just something that was kind of goes hand in hand with that?
Yeah. GU was my first dip into actually like purchasing or being or financially a part of um, the NFT space. Like I said, I followed along with CryptoKitties and watched that all unfold, and was more of a fan from a technical interest standpoint, but not I never got involved or financially purchased any of that. So Gods Unchained was definitely my first NFT purchase, and still my largest NFT purchase. So
Nice.
yeah, so I still yeah, so I still am a believer in Gods Unchained, and yeah, that's I would say it broadened it because it kind of it's mainly because it forced me to open my wallet and get involved in that way as well from
Right.
an NFT standpoint, not just from a cryptocurrency standpoint.
Yeah, no, definitely I feel the same way. Knew a little bit about crypto coins, and really GU was my first foray into owning, the quote unquote digital assets, NFTs, I guess. Yeah, so basically I'm in the same boat you are. So you mentioned that you and Steven found the game sort of through the crypto side of it. Um, so did you have any other card game experience before Gods Unchained?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people can remember, like Pokemon cards, at least that are my age when they were kids, and I never got into Pokemon cards at that age. Actually, a little bit later, I got into Young Jedi cards. I don't know if there's any people who played that game. It's Star Wars. And then there was actually DBZ CCG, which I still think is one of the greatest card games of all time.
Huh,
I would 100% financially back a digital card game like DBZ CCG, where you have a single, um, you're like, I don't know if you've ever played it or not, Professor, but there's like a single character in each deck, and like you build a deck style around that one player, and you power him up, sort of like the TV show. You power them up, they get angrier and stronger, but there isn't like, there's not like a series of creatures or multiple Pokemon or whatever, that you just have one character, and it's just exciting. Like opening packs, I feel like was more exciting with that game because you could open up like a level 4 version of some character, and if you had them, it was awesome. Now I can level them up to level 4, but if you didn't, you'd have to maybe consider going and buying the other three. Whereas a game where it's just creature based, you can just get one creature and you have you don't really need like an evolution. I mean, I guess Pokemon kind of had the evolution thing going for it, but this was sort of like that, but on a very even more focused level.
right. Yeah, I
But
never
yes,
played.
I have a TCG. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I never played that game, but it's an interesting concept. So it sounds like you get that one character, and you other cards basically support or power it up, or maybe even debuff the enemy, I would think. Are there like ally cards for that character, or is it just
Yeah, yeah,
okay?
yeah, yeah. In that game, it's basically like you have the majority of the cards are just like attacks or like different types of attacks, and there's not so much buffs as they are just like attacks, and then working attacks and defense, kind of working around those things. And then like when you get stronger, you could those attacks do more damage, or you could yeah. I mean, there are debuffs, obviously that sort of stuff too, but and then there's like allies and locations and that. Yeah, the game evolved pretty well. I don't know. I wasn't that old when I played, so I don't at the highest competitive level. I don't know how balanced it was. I think it was like most card games, probably 6 or 7 viable decks at the top.
Okay, yeah.
Um, you know, I don't know if GU has 6 or 7 viable decks right now at the top, but hopefully that's the goal here, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's just how you know quote unquote the meta and the player base kind of moves towards, is that once people discover what works, then everybody kind of just shifts towards that, and then other decks sort of adjust and rise up to either complement or counter it, etc. So I think it makes sense in most card games. I mean, I'm not like 100% knowledgeable of all card games, and I would like to know if there are other card games where it's like infinite possible powerful decks, but I would think that players just tend to develop towards a few powerful decks.
Right, right. And I've played Hearthstone a bunch, and
Hmm.
I've played Magic, and I'm I've played a few games of Magic the Gathering. I'm aware of how it works and that sort of stuff. So yeah,
Okay.
I mean obviously, yeah, I mean Hearthstone is the closest thing this is to, and I played a bunch of Hearthstone too. So that's kind of that experience kind of gave me more knowledge to develop GUDecks. I mean, I kind of know, I'm familiar with all the top Hearthstone help sites because I use those too when I played that. So.
Yeah, interesting. Um, did you play any card game competitively, or was this mostly just casual with your brother?
No, 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 no. Yeah, no, that's no, never. I think I went to like 1 or 2 DBZ CCG matches as a kid, and we got like smoked by these adults who actually knew what they were doing. So yeah.
Yeah, that's always crushing when when you're used to the neighborhood kids and you're playing, and then you go to those
Exactly,
those gatherings, and these people are like taking it seriously, and you're just like, all right, I guess I'm gonna find a new hobby.
exactly, exactly. But it was fun. I still have good memories of it. So.
Yeah, definitely. So speaking of hobbies, do you have any other hobbies besides crypto, Gods Unchained, and I guess running the website GUDecks.
Yeah, so surfing is the majority of my lifestyle. So yeah, if you guys complain about GUDecks or Token Trove not working or whatever, then it's probably because we're out on the waves and not listening to your Discord comments.
Nice. So physical surfing. I was going to ask you if you were talking about internet surfing, but
Actually, yeah, actual surfing, yeah. I mean, I surf the web too, obviously, but actual surfing, yeah, yeah. We're down
nice.
here in sunny Florida, so we get a lot of opportunity for that. So.
Okay. Well, let me. When did you pick up surfing? Was that something you grew up doing already, or was this recent?
Yeah. I've surfed for. I mean, I guess not since I was a young kid, but probably for the last 10 years or so. I've surfed. So me and my brother too. So yeah, we have. That was a hobby long garnered before Gods Unchained, that sort of stuff. So.
So would you say you're a pretty good surfer, or how would you rate your skills?
I think most people who say they're a good surfer probably aren't, and people who say they're not very good are probably better than they say. So I would consider myself on the lower scale of intermediate, probably.
Okay, so basically you said you're not that good, which means you are good then. You just
Yeah,
played.
okay, yeah. To someone who doesn't know what good surfing really looks like, I'd probably look pretty good. But to people who actually know what good surfing looks like, yeah, they'd probably put me down towards the bottom middle section of intermediate. So.
All right, so well, for other surfing fans out there, I just want to ask, so what's the best place you've ever gone to, with the best waves or whatever you guys seek out when you surf?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, that's a good question. So me and my buddies, we did a surf trip one year to Costa Rica, and we went down to Playa Hermosa. And anyone who's been down to Costa Rica can just knows how heavy of a wave that can be. So yeah, it's a Costa Rica is like I think is like one of the best places for surfing in the world. It's just really consistent. It's beautiful and it's fun. It's hot, and like I said, I'm from Florida, so that sun is baking way worse even down there. So if you're from the West Coast or farther up north, it's quite a temperature change. But the water is beautiful there, and the waves are great.
That's great. Thanks for sharing. Uh, Jumping back to GU real quick, uh, you mentioned that you played casually. You weren't really too casually before GU, and you weren't really too competitive. But now, with Gods Unchained, obviously, you have financial incentives, and you also run a website and you play the game. I do see your name in the, top 20 ranks when you're active. So I guess what's your favorite um, archetype slash deck god? Since you have the history of playing this game for such a while now, what's been your favorite kind of deck to play?
Yeah, I always loved Magic. It's a shame that like control. It's not a shame. Ramp Magic was always my favorite, and now it's just like super. It's I obviously incredibly overpowered right now. So like I'm still playing that now, anyways. But I think if someone still has the records from a long time ago, I think I got third in the very first ranked weekend that mattered. It may have been the second one. I don't know. Someone can correct me. But yeah, using Ramp Magic a long time ago. And I've always liked Ramp Magic. For the longest time, I played light because I think I'm on the weekends. I'm usually just playing what's overpowered as long as I don't think it's terribly boring. Some decks I just find incredibly boring. Like I think nature is not fun to me, and obviously everyone's playing it, so like
Yeah.
I'm just sick of playing. So, but yeah, but I think Ramp Magic is cool. I think Ramp and like particularly decks like Deception and decks that kind of break out of they kind of like break the rules. I like that about GU, and that's actually one of the reasons I even kind of got involved in GU is because I like that they're willing to kind of that's something that I think Hearthstone doesn't do a very good job. They don't really like to break their own rules in terms of like um, I mean, I don't know. There's all sorts of crazy crap now in Hearthstone, I guess. But there's the hand control and that sort of weird stuff. I think is cool and unique, and it's more of a Magic the Gathering kind of thing, which I wasn't super familiar with. So I like, or I people say it's more of a Magic the Gathering kind of thing. So I like that sort of stuff. So yeah, I guess ramp Magic, and then probably like I like Deception. Those are my two go tos. But I mean, I like cookie decks. Like I like mill decks. I like chosen one decks. Like if I'm playing just for fun, which I don't do a whole lot anymore right now, I'm usually just playing some like weird deck that I consider fun. So
Yeah, so it sounds like you like the ability to be able to be a little bit unpredictable with your decks. I know ramp magic nowadays is still known, ramp, but I guess, it kind of goes around the standard of, okay, 1 mana, I want to play 1 mana creatures, 2 mana, I want to play this, sort of like that sequential ordering, and also with deception where you could, hand disruption, put creatures to sleep. So it sounds like you like sort of that ability to be able to be unpredictable.
Right, I do.
Great. All right, let me transition over to your website. I know a lot of people, a lot of our players use your website. It's a great resource. I use it myself quite a bit. So let me walk you back to the beginning. You mentioned you were there at the beginning of Gods Unchained, and you mentioned a little bit of experience with Hearthstone and sort of the different resources there. So when you got into Gods Unchained, or maybe even before, did you already have the idea that you wanted to start a website, or was there sort of a genesis, an idea of starting when you were like, okay, I want to do this?
Yeah, for the people, my fellow Gods Unchained players who were there from the beginning, you'd remember that GUDecks actually came out months before the game even came out.
Okay.
So when they first announced cards, like they first announced like what cards were going to be in the sets and that sort of stuff, people were all excited and kind of like, I remember, I think it was CERN, maybe somebody else saying like, I wish we could just build these decks and kind of, theory craft on these decks and could share them around, and wouldn't that be cool? And my brother and I, we had some free time. Like, yeah, that actually would be cool. And maybe we have some extra free time now, and we kind of want to support this crypto movement. So maybe we'll make a deck builder for this site for this game. So we went ahead and just built a deck builder. All you could do is build decks and share them. Right? It's basically like obviously there wasn't meta, there wasn't a game, there wasn't an API. Well, there was. You could get cards from, you can get the card images from the API. So we just, so we built, GUDecks basically as a deck builder where you could build and share decks for fun and kind of come up with combos. And I'm surprised, maybe surprising or not, a decent amount of people used it, shared it, thought it was cool, and were excited about it. The first site only took us, 2 or 3 days to build. It was just like I said, it was just kind of build your decks and share them. There wasn't a whole like back end login infrastructure, that sort of stuff at that point.
Okay. So that was sort of the starting point, just sort of that need, since there wasn't one yet, and then sort of people just asking, it'd be great to have a deck builder. And so it started out as sort of just a way for people to be able to start putting decks together for fun without even being able to play them, right?
Yeah, yeah, right, yeah, because it was months before the game even came out. So I
Okay.
think this is back when like the Hyperion auction, like there were lights biddings and Hyperion auction. I think that was like July 2018, so like it was like right around that time. I think we actually put our site out right before, like a couple days before that, maybe
O-
it was just around that time frame.
Okay. Um, and then you mentioned that, you and both you and your brother are software developers. Did you have any prior experience before GUDecks of creating websites or anything like that?
Yeah, so both of us we've worked in the industry for about well at that when I guess when that came out probably 7 to 10 years. And yeah, so we've done web apps and that sort of stuff. Never on our own. We didn't work for ourselves at that point. Um, yeah, we had experience working on web apps, larger scale web apps. But it's one of those things where when you work for a corporation or another company, you don't necessarily always get to do the what I would call mundane tasks of setting up an email server or handling authentication, those sort of things. So this was more of a full stack experience where we had to do all of the things, even the unfun things, right, of deployment and handling that sort of stuff. So it was a good experience for both of us. I'd definitely say programming wise, I mean, if I think our skill speaks for itself based on what we put out and time wise and that sort of thing. But I mean, anyone can be critical if they want to be. But uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, so skill wise, programming wise, we were already very knowledgeable, but we hadn't put out our own our own website and worked on okay, who's hosting, the sort of nuts and bolts of getting something actually out as opposed to just having to build it and let some other systems manager do that kind of mundane stuff, I would say.
Right. So this is basically your first baby.
This is our first. I've done some mobile app stuff on my own too, put out some of that stuff, but I think mobile apps are pretty easy now because the Google or the Android and the iPhone store or Apple store, they both have really easy. You just build these things and then you give it to them and they do all the running. Whereas web stuff, you kind of have to be ready for scale and that sort of thing.
Right. So without getting too technical, you said you and your brother were able to launch GUDecks in a couple of days. What did you find the most difficult? I know you mentioned you didn't have sort of the experience yet of, running the full gamut of, I guess looking for domains and launching the whole thing from nuts to bolts. So what would you say was the most difficult experience in those getting that set up and getting it launched?
Yeah, early days was just figuring out who's going to host this and how do we actually connect this to a domain name and that sort of stuff, right? That kind of stuff is. I'm trying to think if we where we even hosted it. Yeah, I think we bought the domain and hosted it pretty quickly. And that stuff, it's not complicated. It's just kind of um, unknown, like if you've never
Right.
done that before. And obviously, I mean, everyone, tons of people have websites, and they can use WordPress or geez, what are some of the other ones that everyone else is using? But this is a website made from scratch, right? So it's just different, and there's lots of unknowns. But nothing very complicated, right? Obviously, like for people making websites, the real hardest part is knowing how to program, and everything else there's kind of like helpful tutorials and stuff for that anyone can figure out. And I think it's healthy for people because this stuff is only going to get more and more prominent, I guess, in our world. But the unknowns of okay, we actually have to deploy it now. Like, what are we going to do here? So
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, going into something like this where, like you said, you had different skill sets and not really the whole experience of running it. So yeah, you don't know what you don't know yet. And then it's, I guess, like you said, that's the hardest part is you need to teach yourself it and sort of figure out what the process is. So when you first launched the website, you mentioned that it was sort of an answer to a need from the community. Did you have any other sort of vision or far-reaching goals for the website, or was it just sort of like as an answer to have there, or and then so I guess when did you start developing the other features of the website?
yeah, it's kind of funny because the the journey, like the crypto kind of moved on. I mean, we're still obviously on this journey of where Gods Unchained went and where crypto's going now, and with Immutable X and all of that sort of stuff. But yeah, initially it was just a deck builder. We weren't really planning on having some complex site. That we weren't even necessarily thinking about size or how we can, or how really what we're going to do with the website. We just wanted to let people get excited about this game because we were excited about this game. And so we went ahead and yeah, it was just deck builder, and then we decided, well, why can't we make this more like the HS replays or Hearthstone top decks, and make it like an actual useful site when this game comes out. And we kind of talked with the team. The team was back then it was really easy to chat with the majority of the team. They were smaller and they were pushing stuff out, so you could chat with them and figure out what make some changes to the API, and they wanted help kind of with to make it usable by other people and third parties. So they kind of partnered a little bit with us, and together we kind of built up. I guess we built up and used this API, and then we kind of just went from having just uh, a deck builder to actually decks you can store and kind of share to having the meta. And when matches started dropping and meta started coming out, we thought, okay, well, why don't we just have, why don't we do like the other Hearthstone sites and show what gods are doing the best, and maybe what cards are doing the best, that sort of thing. So, and then eventually, our most popular feature, I'm sure almost everybody uses, is the player lookup, and kind of how we actually didn't even build. For those who remember, we didn't even have the player your current win rate for the weekend for the longest time. You had to go to another site to find that, and and we just Steve and I were stubborn. We didn't want to add that, and people were fine using the other site, but we realized that it got so much traffic that everyone needed that, and we just assumed the Gods Unchained team was going to build it much quicker than they haven't yet. So we thought they were going to build it, and then they didn't. So we were like, okay, well, we need to jump on this. If they're not going to build it for a while, it'll take us a few days just to build this and set this up. Let's just go ahead and do it.
Yeah,
And yeah, and so we added that, and now it's super popular, which I don't blame it. If I was the Gods Unchained team, I wouldn't build it into the game right now either. If enough people have access to it and can use it, I'd rather them focus on more things in the game, right, than that. Like if there's stuff a third party can do right now, just let the third party do it, and then they can focus on the game and things that I can't develop.
no, that totally makes sense. I mean, a lot of these things that you're talking about, they're great enhancements, but I think ultimately there's still a lot of development that's needed with the game. So I agree with you where I'd be happier too, and I am, that a lot of the focus is on the development versus enhancements. Um, so you brought up the lookup. I wanted to talk to you about that. So I recently made a video about, using GUDecks extensively, to find that information to help a lot of players. Because I think what I started seeing was that there's been a lot of, well, I guess I'm generalizing, but there's been a movement towards players hiding their names in game. And I felt personally that it might have been a little bit unfair to some players that were coming in that didn't know about that and they were getting looked up, whether or not it was being done. But I felt, there was the chance was there for them to get looked up, and then they weren't able, they didn't have the ability or the know-how to kind of at least even the playing field. So you mentioned that that's one of sort of the more popular features right now. I guess what are your thoughts on that lookup function and just the practice of players hiding their names or looking each other up.
Yeah, it's interesting. The team themselves has gone back and forth. I think there's some disagreement within the team about people looking up their names. The reality is that somebody, or like if we show it, right, I've had people just say, David, why are you sharing that? Take it off of GUDecks. It's an unfair advantage. Well, the reality is if we take it down, someone else is going to build it up themselves. Like someone else is going to add it to their own to their own site, or they'll just be able to do it, personally. It's not like the API isn't publicly available to everybody. So at this point, like I guess the reason we didn't even add it in the first place was because of how I assumed that people would just want to use archetypes, or they would want to use I think the bigger the game gets, the less and less people are going to care about individual decks, and the more and more they'll care about archetypes. And we've actually built like the more complex parts of the site, like archetypes and deck, like guessing the archetypes and consolidating the types into specific categories and that sort of things, which requires some more complex. Those things are used less right now, and there's people clicking on other people's decks, and I get it. I mean, that makes sense. I do the same thing. But in the future, when there's more and more decks, I think it's going to be less and less important about what deck someone is using, and more important about the archetypes. So,
Right.
so I guess to more specifically answer your question, the hiding of names, I don't know. I mean, I think it's fine. It's a workaround thing. Realistically, if someone's hiding their name, you can just go to the matches page and look at the most recent matches and try to find that name and find it anyways. It's really not that hard. So like if you're really trying to do that, that's the easiest way to do it. It's pretty obvious right now. Like if someone's playing a nature deck, maybe there's two types of nature decks, or someone's playing a magic deck and they click on Clear Mind. Well, you know what this deck is about to be about, really, or at least the first couple cards you can figure it out. Half the time I don't even look up decks. It's kind of more fun for me to play without that. If it's like towards the end of the game and I'm at 20 wins and I want my 21st win, then maybe I'll look up and see if they're actually running an extra Hellion Elite, or if they have Avatar of Magic and I need to save my Ratify for it, that sort of thing. And that's always going to be useful. So I don't see the team hiding the decks. Steve and I, we've always advocated for them to either keep the data available or at least change it so there's like you can make it so there's some sort of, I don't know. I mean, the problem is as soon as you hide some data, then you just get an inaccurate picture. So maybe they could change it to say, okay, well let's hide data for the last 30 minutes or something. Well, that's fine, but realistically, it doesn't matter that much because you can just look at what deck that person used yesterday, and if it's a Magic deck, it's probably the same deck on the weekend.
Yeah.
So there's not a real good way of doing that, while also not taking away the data for us to share, right? I mean, there's so many good things about the data. Heck, the team uses our site to work on balancing and stuff like that too. So there's like good data there that you're gonna throw that away if you also throw away the individual matchups. I've advocated that maybe they hide the names. That you can maybe the best thing you can do is just hide your names during the match. Like I think that's like such an easy fix. Like if you enable name hiding, I get streamers might not want to hide their name. That's cool. Leave the name on. But if you just don't want people looking at your name, just go anonymous. And that's basically what people are doing, right? They're choosing to go anonymous. And then if you allow anonymous playing, it's totally fine. People can't look up your direct deck. Can show their name if they want to for whatever reason. Or, I mean, it just kind of solves all problems, and we can still share the data. So that was whenever I hear people complaining about hiding things, I always just, or about removing the data, I always just say, well, let's just keep the data. Let's just allow people to go anonymous.
Yeah, I think that's a good suggestion where each player, or maybe whether it's universal or not, but a little toggle that says hide name. That way, when you get matched up, it just says Magic versus Nature, but it doesn't say the names on there. And like you said, I think at this point, um, as the card games mature, and even the way we're at right now, most decks are pretty known. Like if I'm Nature, I'm playing against Magic, I'm expecting two asterisks, Avatar Magic, etc. So I think you're right. I think that would be a good fix. Just having that option to toggle anonymous, and you don't really need the names. I mean, you just see the matchups, and I think that's enough to go off, right?
For sure, yeah. It's interesting because we are going to be in a weird place with Gods Unchained, where for those who play Hearthstone, right? If you're playing a specific deck, a specific archetype, you're likely playing, this exact deck of cards, right?
Right.
They're rarely, yeah. I mean, there's some switches, but if there's some switch, it's usually considered a different archetype, right? Because it's so easy to get all the cards, right? So you can just do that. Whereas Gods Unchained, like, there's not going to be a lot of people running around with Demogorgons, if this game is successful. There's not a lot of people going to be running around with an Avatar of Magic in their deck if this game is successful. So a specific deck will give you, it does. It gives you major advantage, if you know what to save your Ratify for. If you know, okay, I'll just let Echo Fan hit me twice in the face because I know they still have a Avatar of Magic I need to use, I need to use this on, that sort of thing. So it'll be interesting to see. But yeah, I still advocate anonymous name, people being able to make anonymous names in game. So because the feature isn't there yet, I'm totally fine with people doing that on their own. And then noobs, like all games, they have to learn. So
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, that was definitely my incentive to create that video. I just feel like I do want, the way we're at right now, I just want everyone to have an even playing field. GUDecks is available for everyone. It's a great resource, but maybe people aren't, maximizing what they could get out of it. So I wanted to make sure people definitely, have the right tools. Whether or not they want to use it, it's up to them. But definitely just even out the playing field. So speaking of GUDecks being a great resource, what other features do you want to advertise on GUDecks that you think is underutilized by other players? For example, like is what you think is very beneficial, but people might be overlooking it.
I think that people are overlooking the archetype section a little bit. So the way it works is it's not super complicated. We basically have set of cards, and then we see if the decks have a percent, a matching percentage to kind of fit into the archetype. So that's why sometimes people make decks and it doesn't trigger as being in an archetype. Maybe they just didn't have the right percentage of cards, and we try to keep the archetypes loose enough so they can pull in cards. One cool advantage of that is that when you pull in, when it's not like a hard decision, or like a hard number of cards, is that there will be cards that show up in not a lot of these decks, but just in some of the decks, and then they're also very winning cards. So for instance, there'll be like a nature deck, right? And of course, if it's like the big beast deck, they're gonna have that 5/5, what is it, Rhino, and then they're gonna have the, actually no, maybe it's a bull. They'll have the bull and the rhino, right? They'll have, and then there's like a specific set of cards they'll have, but then maybe like Selena will be in there, and it won't be in as many decks, but it will be like, like kind of, maybe it'll be like 37% of those decks. And then so you'll be able to go to the archetype page and see, oh yeah, like Selena is in, a decent amount of people are pulling this into the archetype, and then you can go check the win rate of it, and you say, oh man, those decks actually are winning a lot more too with her in it. So there's kind of that. The card rankings page, unfortunately, it's useful, but it's not incredibly useful yet because we have to calculate it. Like, we don't know what cards have been played in a game. If we had that information, that page would be incredibly more useful because it would show you how much better it was when you played that specific card. So right now, all the Magic cards, of course, are rated very highly and have high win rates. That's more so a it's more so an outcome of Magic Ramp just being good in general versus those individual cards. But even within that, you can still go to the card rankings page and say, okay, of Magic Ramp, which of these cards are doing the best? And they do. I mean, like if you look at Nature and look at the top cards and filter by core, you're going to see things like the Hunt, Marshwalker, well, actually, board's not core, but Jaguar. You'll see you'll see all of the cards that obviously are suspected being nerfed. And so obviously like the card rankings page is super useful too. I also think it's very useful from a investment standpoint. Like that's where you probably want to go if you're a collector or investor, is you can kind of go into that page and kind of see. I know there's other sites where you can see how often the cards are played. That's not as useful, I don't think, because I think the meta shifts. I mean, you want a combination of how much it's played, but also how how successful it is in being played, and that's kind of like okay, you can kind of get a better picture for cards that are underpriced, that sort of thing. And Immutable X will only make that easier to actually buy from there, etc.
Right on. So just real quick, I was able to find the card rankings page easily. And then you're talking about the archetype. I went to the tier list. Is that what you're talking about?
So if you go to the tier list and just click on one of the archetypes, so
Right.
whatever's on, I don't know what's on top right now.
Yeah. So that's yeah. Okay. That's what I did. I just wanted to make sure that we're communicating to listeners, how to get to it. But definitely, yeah. I went to the meta tab on the upper top menu, then went to the tier list, and then you get your archetypes listed there. And I just clicked into one of them, and then it just shows sort of like you mentioned, the most popular cards in those deck, and then at the bottom a couple of examples of top decks that run those cards.
Yeah. I think, and it's cool because then you can from there. We're trying to build it so like it gives you an idea. Like again, right now we're kind of deck based because the game is so small. But I think we're going to kind of step away from that. The larger and or hopefully we step away from that if because the game that means the game will be getting larger, and then we'll step more into this like archetype based area where unlike these other Hearthstone games where like I said all the decks are the exact same. These decks will be a little bit different, so we have to be a little more not error prone, but not a little more heuristical, I guess. And that's where these archetype pages will come into play. It'll say, okay, well, these Atlantean. I'm looking at Atlantean Deception right now. That face touch golem is basically in every single one of those decks. Because it's basically a pillar to that deck. So things like that are going to help what cards you need to buy and what cards are common in what decks without having to give you an exact. This is what the deck requires, and it kind of gives you some more room to play with. Okay, here maybe I'll take the best from this deck and the best from this deck. So
Right, to be able to kind of brew something up that's totally different. Yeah, interesting
right,
because
right.
if I go to the archetype page and I go to ramp magic, which is one, two, three, four, five, the sixth one down, it's interesting because obviously we're talking about mirage level ramp magic, the demogorgons are staples, but because it's like you said mentioned earlier, it's not readily available. It's only in 37% of the decks, but really card popularity, if it was available everywhere, you'd see demogorgon right near the top there of ramp magic.
For sure, and that's why it is important to also have like that's why we have the decks on the bottom as well too, right?
Yeah,
Because people will, I mean, because and this kind of gives you a better idea for pricing too, right? You say, oh, hey, here's a card that's it's in 37%. Well, now let me go and see how that card actually, if I go to the cards or if I go to the meta and then card rankings and then see, I mean, Demogorgon is kind of generic because it's across the board, but now if I go there, oh, I see Demogorgon wins in 60% of the games. Wow, well that's even though it's only in 37%. Why isn't it included more? Well, there you go. The estimated price is $200 right now, or I'm sorry, $400 now with the current ETH price. So
yeah. East's been going
that's
crazy.
that kind of gives you a hint. Yeah, that kind of gives you a hint as to why. But that's the sort of stuff we want to do, right? We want to provide that sort of full picture of. But people are requesting a filter on trials only decks and we're still kind of thinking about how we want to phrase that. But our goal is to help out people to find out, what decks can I do with X amount of money or that sort of thing. So
Yeah, and just real quick, you mentioned requesting features. I'll add a link to the description, but David has a Discord site, the GUDecks official Discord site server, where he's really responsive on there. There's announcement, general chat, deck building section, and also a section for reporting bugs and also requesting features. So for those of you that are interested in joining that server, the link will be in the description, and I recommend it. David and also Stephen on those servers, they're really responsive.
yeah,
Uh,
and whenever I'll tell you whatever bugs and features get put in there, those usually make it higher up on the list because it's just easier to maintain them in there. So sometimes people will just message me and I'm like, okay, yeah, maybe, yeah. But like if you drop them in there, they almost, well, they will. They'll always go into the to-do list, or I'll talk to you about why they're not going to do it or whatever. So
Okay,
those get the higher priority. So.
great, great. So kind of looking forward, do you have any enhancements or features that you have planned for the website? Or I know you mentioned you want to kind of do a little more development in terms of like, like the deck archetype, etc. But is there anything else that you're sort of on your to-do list?
Yeah, so one thing we've wanted to do for a while and just haven't gotten around to it, is just kind of some streamer, more streamer enhancements. So one thing that we'll probably push out later this week is just like a little streamer pop up, not pop up, just like a little streamer, I don't know, widget on at the top of our site that kind of shows you who's streaming live right now. So you can just
Oh,
kind of click and follow that. But we want to, yeah, I know you'll be excited about that, Professor. And just kind of it'll just show you who's streaming and how many watchers they have currently, that sort of stuff. So we kind of want to encourage streamers. We want streamers obviously to encourage people to come to our site too. We'll probably have this won't be coming for a while, but we want to have like a streamer section where we have featured streamers and that sort of stuff. So we want to really stay integrated with the community. Give shout outs to streamers who shout out to us, that sort of thing. Because like, I mean, kind of like how, our goal is to promote the Gods Unchained community as a whole, right? So, when you, Professor, come and write articles on our site, it's great for us, but we also hope it's great for you too. We want to promote everybody. We want to promote those people in the community who we think boost the community and who are good for the community. So we have that coming. Like I said, we also have a few things planned that we want to kind of make almost, smarter deck finding. So our deck, which I mean, I actually think our deck builder, which was one of the original things we built, is still great and useful. We all want to highlight somehow. I don't know. We're working on this more, like highlight more custom created decks. We love when people make decks and they write awesome descriptions about them and link to card names on them and that sort of stuff. So that's kind of why we have the best deck section at the top. We want to kind of keep that going well, but we also want to make it easy for users to find decks based on price and that sort of stuff, because that's something people say, hey, how can I find, I don't have any Genesis cards right now, how can I find a deck that doesn't include Genesis cards? And people make decks and link them, and that's great, but we want to maybe make that functionality on the site as well.
yeah, I think that's great that you mentioned that. I think too, like you said, being involved with the community is huge. I think that's one of the best things that people find out once they, find Gods Unchained and they get really involved. I think the biggest great things are definitely the community. And so like you mentioning, integrating that streamer um, widget, I think that's a great idea. And two, I think GUDecks, like the name says, decks. So I think, those two enhancements are definitely makes a lot of sense to me. So
Yeah, yeah, we do really want to focus on good decks. Yeah, so go ahead.
right, and just sort of, I guess ultimate goal, like if your final vision for GUDecks, you mentioned a lot of things that you want to develop, but let's say, you know, someone were to ask you once you have a lot of the features to fully developed, GUDecks is up and running, and someone, just ask you, what's GUDecks about? Like, well, how would you just, sort of sell that?
Yeah, GUDecks is what you use to become the best Gods Unchained player in the world.
Nice, I like it.
You That's it.
Yeah, no, that's
Like,
great.
period.
It's short and sweet, and it has all the tools you need to become the best. All right.
That's the goal.
So kind of staying towards, wrapping up the interview a little bit, but kind of want to look forward a little bit here. Um, you mentioned that, when 2018 rolled around, you were in crypto with your brother, and then Gods Unchained came out, and you were like, okay, I'll bite. I like this. I'm gonna get involved, invest in this. So, fast forward now, it's 3 years later. What's your thoughts on Gods Unchained's future?
I think with Immutable X, which is an awesome piece of technology, I 100% am a supporter of it. That G's future definitely has the opportunity to be super bright. They still are the first mover in this space. I think in terms of just the first mover in terms of a good blockchain game still. There's still nothing out there. I mean, some people like Axie, and I get that, but I mean, in terms of just like a game that has fun and fun rewards, I still think Gods Unchained is the first and the best. But I also think that the space is quickly narrowing faster. I mean, you can listen to interviews with other people in the space and hear how they're talking about other game companies coming into the space and that sort of thing. And so I think the space is going to be filling up really fast, and there's going to be a lot of competition for Gods Unchained, not just from other crypto projects, but from games coming into the space with NFTs. So Gods Unchained can't be just a game that has play to earn, because there will be other games that have play to earn. So I still think there's, obviously I'm still involved with Gods Unchained. I still think there's a future. I think they need to continue hiring a bunch of engineers and keep moving quickly on that. I know it's no secret how vocal I am about how I feel about Gods Unchained's current progress and that sort of thing. But I don't. I mean, I still have hope, obviously, in the project. And I think it has a good chance going forward. They just need to, hire the right people and keep moving forward.
Well, real quick, let's talk. I know you're really vocal, and some players might not have heard it, but you want to give a quick blurb on what you think on the current state of the game? So maybe
Yeah,
even talk about. Sorry, maybe even talk about just overall Gods Unchained and where it fits in the NFT space, but maybe even the meta slash gameplay too.
right. So I think right now the balance is pretty stale. We haven't had a change in a while. I'm very critical on the timing and the communication from the team. I think uh, that there should be better communication between the community, because the community has put a lot of money into this game in terms of their investment. And I know this isn't an investment, right? I mean, I'm still buying a game token, right? So if it goes belly up, that's on me. But I think that the community has been relatively patient overall, and I think there are changes. I think it mainly does stem from an issue of staffing, probably. I mean, it's and so like the Gods Unchained team, I think, has the best. Um, they have the community's best at their heart, but whether or not it's communicated clearly, I don't think it is. So I guess that's my strongest complaint about it. Like I said, I mean, there's balance issues that obviously need to be done. I think we're not way out of range of the balance, but personally, I prefer games that are more quickly balanced. And then if the meta is changed for the negatively, like way too negatively, then you just make another patch. And I know that's not how the Gods Unchained team operates, but I think that that's a personally, I would prefer that as a strategy for digital card games. I know some smaller digital card games do that, and obviously games like Magic the Gathering can't, and we're kind of behaving a little bit more like that. But I think one strength of a digital card game is the rapid iteration you can have, especially in our so-called beta. So I'm pretty vocal about that. And obviously, everyone who has ever heard me say anything knows I think that going first is insanely imbalanced. I would be remiss if I didn't add that on
Oh
this
yeah.
interview. So I think that is something that needs to change as well. But I think mainly just communication. Like, okay, why hasn't that happened? What's the opinion on why this isn't happening? That sort of stuff. But from an NFT standpoint, I think we're still doing good. With the Immutable X rollout happening and more, and Genesis eventually moving over, and new sets coming out, that sort of stuff. I think, core being forged, I think people will be more and more happy once P2E picks up.
Yeah, I remember used to seeing it more often, not as much anymore, but I remember almost every week you'd be asking, can we get the the data breakdown between first and second and the win rate or something like that. It was like you almost had that
Yep,
ready,
yep.
ready.
I've been pretty. Yep. I still
Yeah.
feel that way. I'm just busier now.
Yeah, I was gonna say I haven't seen it recently, but I remember used to see it pretty often. Uh, so what?
It's usually how bad I'm raging on the weekend. That usually triggers it. So.
Yeah, no, definitely the bugs and the feedback section definitely gets more active during weekends. Just so just real quick before we end, you have anything to plug? Any other projects you're working on that you want to talk about? I know you briefly mentioned Token Trove, but you could talk about that a little bit right now and anything else?
Yeah. The only other project in this space that I'm working on that's related is Token Trove. I think most of the Gods Unchained community thinks that it's the best Gods Unchained marketplace out there. We are the first Immutable X marketplace besides the official marketplace out there, and we're the first marketplace running on Immutable X. We're also going to be we're going to have basically everything that comes out on Immutable X is going to come out on Token Trove. A lot of our last few months of work has been on that. So and we love feedback from you guys. You know, if you think there's a filter or a search or something that you want, or if there's a bug or something you see out there on GUDecks or on Token Trove, just let us know, right? I mean, that's what both of us are working on full time. So we want to make those projects great, and we want people to use them. So if you guys share them, that's awesome. I know we have a lot of competitors in the marketplace space, and we want to be the best, and I think we can be the best. So if you guys have any feedback or anything you want to see from those sites, we're always open to feedback. You can drop us a DM or hit us up on our Token Trove Discord as well.
Yeah, I actually just recently got aware that there was a Token Trove Discord as well. So I will get that link in the description as well, so everybody can reach David and Stephen in the different methods of social and communication that's available to them. One last question, real quick. What do you think about shield bearers right now?
The color needs to be completely reworked.
You don't like it, huh?
I don't. It's toxic. It's used in every single deck, and yeah, there was a nerf months, geez, maybe a year ago, where they nerfed all those cards that give an ally +1, or +1 health or whatever. They nerfed all of them except for Shield Bearer, and Shield Bearer made it through somehow, and it's becoming more and more toxic in my opinion.
Yeah, you're totally right. I think it's definitely ran so much, and it makes great turn one plays almost impossible to deal with from the other side, especially if they're going first and they bag out that shield bearer on a strong creature already. So yeah, I hear you. I remember I asked that question because I saw I think you had a post on Discord. It might have been during the weekend too.
Yep,
Yeah,
yep, yep.
cool. All right, well, thanks for your time, David. I really appreciate it. Before we sign off, anything else you want to, mention?
I just want to mention to all your listeners out there that you guys keep following Professor. He's a good guy and he knows what he's talking about. And I appreciate the work you're doing, helping out all the noobs in Gods Unchained and getting them up to speed. So when they play me, it's not a complete blowout.
Thank you. Very kind words. I appreciate it. I'm glad that you do you want the matches to be a little more competitive. So I'll just let people know if you want it, if you don't want to get blown up by GUDecks when you see him on the ladder, get that shield bearer into your deck before he gets nerfed.
Yeah, go first. That's the thing.
Yeah, go first and add the shield bearer. All right. Well, thanks a lot, David. Appreciate your time.
You're welcome. Thanks a lot.
All right. Bye.